Why do people do the things they do? We need to remember that at the heart of this story is what happened to Carly. However, since Carly disappeared, a fascinating new part of the story has developed. Today we're going to look at this secondary, yet equally fascinating part of the story. It involves an ever-expanding, bizarre cast of characters. Some are good, and some are bad, but they all claim to have Carly's best interest in mind. Unfortunately, Carly and what happened to her seems to be the last thing on some of these people's minds. I'm Kyle Dill. Welcome to Missing the Truth. I struggled to find the proper place to start for episode 2. There's so much to get to that it's overwhelming. But to tell the whole story of Carly Gousset, we need to examine both aspects of the story, her disappearance and what's happened afterwards. And to set the stage for the second part of the story, the people and events that have happened since she disappeared, I keep going back to a truly gut-wrenching story that Lindsay told me during our interview. The story you're about to hear is a perfect example of the bad kinds of people that have attracted themselves to Carly's disappearance. It's a story of a desperate mother clinging to any little bit of information she can get about her missing daughter. A story of a mother's blind faith and hope being taken advantage of by a total stranger for absolutely no reason. The story got me thinking about this question. Why do we do the things we do? Now, I'm no expert in human behavior. In fact, I can't even explain my own behavior most of the time. But the way I see it, human behavior in its most simplistic form is based on rewards. We are motivated to do the things we do because of the reward we receive for doing them. Most people don't get up and go to work for free. No, they go to work for the reward, the paycheck. Now, notice I said most people, not all of them. Of course, there are those outliers, those that do something they're truly passionate about without the expectation of anything in return. But what about the other side of those outliers? What about the people that are motivated to do things where the only possible reward can be hurting someone else? What motivates these people to do the things they do? Keep that in mind as you listen to this story from my interview with Lindsay. What could possibly motivate anyone to do something like this?
It's actually kind of weird what happened, and this is kind of why I don't really enjoy going down for the searches. So she calls me up one morning and said, "Lindsay, they found her body." And I said, "Who? What? What do you mean?" And she's like, "You have to go. They found her body." And I said, "Well, where? What do you think when that's being said? You panic, you ask questions. Where did they find her?" And she's all, "No. Here's the map, here's the location, there's a circle here, you go up here." She's telling me all these directions of where to go. So I get in the car and I jet down to Bishop. And as I get there to the road we're supposed to turn off, there is a search and rescue off-road vehicle meeting us at the gate. And I told him my whole story. This lady calls me, tells me I need to find her, she's supposed to be here. And he said, "Ma'am, we just put some cadaver dogs out there, and just please give us an hour." And I said, "Okay, can I show you the map that I was given with the location so you guys can go search?" And he said, "Yes." So I showed him, and he goes, "That's right where we dropped the cadaver dogs off." And I said, "Okay." So we gave him an hour. During that time, we were waiting, and then they come out, and there were like 5 officers that lined up and drove up to Zach and Melissa's house. So we followed them, and I'm like, "Oh my God, they found her." And so we went up there, and apparently they didn't find her. Nobody came and talked to us, knowing that I was there already. They didn't even acknowledge me. And I wasn't going to go up to Zach and Melissa's house because we're not on speaking terms anymore. And so that we drove up to the area where I got the map and the location of where Carly was supposed to be. And I found a rock formation. And I started digging it like crazy because it looked like a shallow grave. And there were stink bugs coming out of it. And I just started to panic and scream. And this lady, supposedly the psychic, she's on the phone with me, and she's telling me, she's like, Carly says that her dad is watching you from the window of their house. And I said, oh my gosh, like, and so of course I flip him the bird, because that's how I feel about him. I'm like, good, I hope he sees this. And I just, went about my searching for her, and I feel like they put me on a witch hunt. They literally, formed this supposed search where my daughter was supposed to be, and just to see if I would go. And so that's when everyone's like, oh, let's go to this search, coming up. I can't physically do it. I believe she did somehow, because come to find out, that lady that had me on the witch hunt was also somehow connected to the organized search with the cadaver dogs. And somehow they notified Zach and Melissa that the cadaver dogs were coming out to their residence that day. And I said, that's really interesting, because that's totally not normal protocol. You usually just show up because the dogs need to notice the behavior of the person.
Have you ever met this person?
No, I don't physically know her, but she's the one that told me about the search, or about where I needed to go to look for my daughter.
The psychic told you Zach was watching you. Is there any way he could have possibly seen you?
Yeah, it was directly across the highway from their house. So Highway 6, if you go to Highway 6 and literally just go west, there's a fence, like a barbed wire fence, that you have to open up in order to go in to look where I was. So yeah, it's right there. So that's why I have a really hard time going and, getting involved with these searches.
During our interview, which, by the way, she knew was being recorded for this podcast, Lindsay said many things about Carly's disappearance that would break any parent's heart. But this story, it's not only heartbreaking, it's infuriating. And it's a prime example of the bad people that have become involved in this case over the past few months. So what would motivate someone to send Lindsay on this wild goose chase? What could the reward possibly be? And what kind of person would do something like that to a complete stranger? It's a question I'm not qualified to answer, so I'm calling in some backup. And on the next episode of Missing the Truth, we're going to talk to somebody that can help us understand this type of behavior. And if you think this is the only cockroach to climb out of the woodworks in this story, well, you've got another thing coming. And in the weeks ahead, we're going to flip the switch and watch these cockroaches scatter as they're exposed by the light. Thanks for listening. If you have any information on the disappearance of Carly Gousset, please contact the Mono County Sheriff's Department at 760-932-7549.